Christmas Eve snow has a way of making everything feel magical, like the world is holding its breath for something beautiful. That night, I was driving down the quiet roads with my 6-year-old son Marcus in the back seat, his little hands clutching a handmade gift he had spent 2 weeks creating for his great-grandma Theodosia. He kept asking me if she would love it. I told him she would treasure it forever. What I did not know was that before we could even step inside, my own mother would slam the door in our faces. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from tonight. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. What happened after we returned to that house changed everything I thought I knew about my family. To understand why that moment at the door hurt so deeply, you need to know where I stand in my family. My name does not matter much in this story because honestly, in my family, I never really mattered at all. I am 32 years old, work as an electrician, and make an honest living. Nothing glamorous, nothing impressive by my mother Patricia's standards, but enough to keep a roof over my son's head and food on our table. My wife Lauren passed away 2 years ago from cancer. She was only 29. Marcus was 4 when she died, too young to fully understand why mommy was not coming home anymore, but old enough to feel the emptiness she left behind. Lauren was a nurse and orphan who grew up in foster care and the kindest soul I have ever known. My mother never approved of her. At our wedding, which my parents refused to help pay for, my mother told me privately that I could have done better, that Lauren was beneath our family. I never forgave her for those words, but I buried them deep because that is what you do when you want to keep the peace. My younger brother Derek has always been the golden child. 4 years younger than me, but somehow always 4 steps ahead in my parents' eyes. He went to law school, became an attorney, married Stephanie, whose father owns a chain of car dealerships across the state. They have 2 kids, a big house in the suburbs, and my mother's undying adoration. Everything Derek does is celebrated. Everything I do is questioned. When Derek graduated high school, my parents threw him a massive party. Relatives flew in from 3 states. There was a live band. When I graduated 2 years earlier, we went to a chain restaurant and my father complained about the prices. When Derek got married, the reception was at a 5-star hotel downtown. My parents covered every penny. When Lauren and I got married at a small community center, my mother did not even show up. She claimed she had a work emergency, but Derek told me later he saw her posting photos from a spa retreat that same weekend. The only person who ever truly saw me, who ever truly loved me without conditions, was my grandmother Theodosia. She is my mother's mother, 78 years old, a retired elementary school teacher who still has more wisdom and warmth than anyone else I know. She has lived alone in her big Victorian house on the edge of town ever since my grandfather passed away 15 years ago. That house has 6 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and enough space to host the entire family comfortably. Grandma Theodosia always treated me differently, but in the best way. She would pull me aside at family gatherings and tell me she was proud of me. She came to my high school graduation when my parents acted like it was a chore. She danced at my wedding when my mother was nowhere to be found. And when Lauren died, when my world collapsed and I could barely function, Grandma Theodosia drove 4 hours to stay with me for an entire month. She cooked for us, cleaned our apartment, and held Marcus when he cried for his mother. She held me too when I thought I would never stop crying. A month before Christmas, Grandma Theodosia called me personally. Her voice was warm but serious. She told me that this year's Christmas gathering at her house was important, that she had something she needed to share with the family, and that I absolutely had to be there with Marcus. She made me promise. I did. I also mentioned it to my mother during one of our rare phone calls. She said she would let everyone know. I trusted that she would. So there we were on Christmas night, Marcus bouncing excitedly in his car seat as we pulled up to Grandma's house. The windows glowed with warm light. I could see the Christmas tree through the front window, decorated just like she did every year, with the antique ornaments she had collected over decades. I parked the car, helped Marcus out, and we walked up the porch steps together. Marcus rang the doorbell himself. He loved doing that. We waited. I could hear footsteps inside, voices, laughter. Then the door cracked open just a few inches and my mother's face appeared in the gap. She did not smile. She did not say Merry Christmas. She looked at me like I was a stranger trying to sell something. Marcus, oblivious to the tension, beamed up at her. "Grandma, Merry Christmas," he said, his voice full of innocent excitement. My mother barely glanced at him. She kept her eyes on me, her expression cold as the winter air. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Her voice was flat, unwelcoming. I was confused. I told her Grandma Theodosia invited us. I reminded her about the phone call about the promise I made. My mother shook her head slowly. "Your grandmother is tired," she said, "and the house is full. Derek and Stephanie are here with the kids. There is no room left. You should go home." I could not believe what I was hearing. I tried to explain that Grandma specifically asked us to come, that she said it was important, but my mother cut me off. "I said there is no room. Do not make a scene. Just go." And then she closed the door, not slammed it, but closed it firmly, deliberately, right in our faces. I stood there on that porch, the cold seeping through my coat, my son's hand in mine. Marcus looked up at me, his eyes already filling with tears, his voice small and confused. "Daddy, why will Grandma not let us in? Did we do something wrong?" My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I knelt down, pulled him close, and told him no, we did not do anything wrong. I told him the house was just crowded, and we would see Great-Grandma Theodosia another time. I tried to keep my voice steady, but inside I was drowning. We walked back to the car. Marcus climbed into his seat, still clutching that handmade gift he had worked so hard on. I buckled him in, got behind the wheel, and just sat there for a moment, staring at that glowing house full of warmth that had no room for us. Then I started the car and drove away. The road stretched out ahead of us, dark except for my headlights cutting through the falling snow. Marcus was quiet in the back seat, which was unusual for him. Normally, he would be chattering away about something he saw or something he wanted to tell me. But that night, he just sat there, holding his gift, staring out the window at nothing. I kept checking on him in the rearview mirror. Every time I looked, my chest tightened a little more. This was my son, my whole world, and I had just let someone make him feel unwanted on Christmas. My mind drifted back through years of similar moments. I remembered my high school graduation, sitting in that auditorium scanning the crowd for my parents. I found my mother checking her phone, looking bored. My father was not there at all. He had a business meeting he could not reschedule. But when Derek graduated, both of them sat in the front row cheering like he had just won a Nobel Prize. I remembered bringing Lauren home to meet my parents for the first time. My mother looked her up and down like she was inspecting merchandise and finding it lacking. She asked Lauren where her people were from, and when Lauren explained she grew up in foster care, my mother's lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Later that night, she pulled me aside and told me I was making a mistake. A man should marry up, she said, not down. I remembered Lauren's funeral. The church was packed with her friends, her co-workers, people whose lives she had touched as a nurse. My parents arrived late, stayed for 20 minutes, then left because my father had a golf game he did not want to miss. Derek made an appearance, shook my hand, offered some empty words of condolence, then spent most of the reception on his phone. Only Grandma Theodosia stayed until the very end. She helped me carry Lauren's favorite flowers back to the car. She held my hand when I could not hold myself together. Now here I was again, being pushed aside, being told there was no room for me. And this time my innocent child was caught in the middle. I had driven about 10 minutes when my phone rang. The screen lit up with a name that made my heart skip: Grandma Theodosia. I pulled over to the side of the road and answered. Her voice came through immediately, and I could hear something I had rarely heard from her: pure, unbridled anger. "Where are you?" she demanded. "Why did you leave?" I was stunned. I explained what happened, how Mom had come to the door, how she told us there was no room, how she basically ordered us to leave. There was a long pause on the other end. When Grandma Theodosia spoke again, her voice was shaking, but not from frailty. From fury. She said she saw my car pull up from her window upstairs. She saw us standing on the porch. Then she saw us walk away and drive off. She went downstairs to ask my mother why we left without coming in. "And do you know what your mother told me?" she said, her voice tight with controlled rage. "She told me you called ahead and said Marcus was sick, that you could not make it tonight." I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. My own mother lied to cover up what she did. Grandma Theodosia's voice softened just slightly, but the steel was still there. "Turn around," she said. "Come back right now. I do not care what your mother said. This is my house and I invited you. You are coming inside tonight." I hesitated. I told her I did not want to cause a scene, did not want to ruin everyone's Christmas. She cut me off firmly. "You are my grandson. Marcus is my great-grandchild. You belong here more than anyone. Now turn this car around and come back. I will be waiting at the door." The line went dead. I sat there in the darkness, the engine idling, snow collecting on the windshield. From the back seat, Marcus's small voice broke the silence. "Daddy, who was that?" I turned around to look at him. His eyes were red from crying, but there was something else there now. Hope. "That was Great-Grandma Theodosia," I said. "She wants us to come back. She is waiting for us." Marcus's face transformed. "Really, Daddy, we get to see her?" I nodded, feeling something shift inside my chest. For years, I had let my mother's treatment wash over me, had accepted being the lesser son, the disappointment. But this was different. This was about my child, and my grandmother was standing up for us when no one else would. I put the car in drive and turned around. When we pulled up to the house again, the front door was wide open despite the cold. Grandma Theodosia stood in the doorway, a small figure in a deep red Christmas dress, her silver hair pinned up elegantly, her posture straight as steel. Even from the car, I could see the determination in her eyes. Marcus scrambled out of his seat before I could even unbuckle him. He ran up the porch steps, and Grandma Theodosia caught him in her arms, hugging him tight. "There is my sweet boy," she said, her voice warm now, all the anger tucked away where Marcus could not see it. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Come inside where it is warm." She looked at me over Marcus's head and nodded once. A silent message passed between us. Whatever was about to happen, she had my back. We walked inside together. The warmth of the house hit me immediately, a stark contrast to the cold rejection from an hour before. The living room was beautiful, decorated exactly as I remembered from every Christmas of my childhood. The massive tree in the corner glittered with lights and ornaments, stockings hung from the mantel. The whole space smelled like pine and cinnamon and my grandmother's famous apple pie. But the atmosphere was anything but festive. My mother Patricia stood near the fireplace, her face pale as a ghost. She clearly had not expected us to return. My father Ronald sat in his usual armchair, looking confused and uncomfortable, like he had walked into a movie halfway through and could not figure out the plot. Derek and Stephanie occupied the main sofa, their two children playing on the floor with new toys. Derek looked at me with that familiar expression of smug superiority, though I noticed a flicker of unease beneath it. Grandma Theodosia guided Marcus to a large chair near the Christmas tree, what my family always called the place of honor. "Sit right here with me, sweetheart," she told him. "Great-Grandma has some things to say to the family." I took a seat nearby, my heart pounding. I had no idea what was about to happen, but I trusted my grandmother completely. She stood in the center of the room, and despite her small stature, her presence filled the entire space. When she spoke, everyone listened. "Tonight is Christmas Eve." She began, her voice clear and strong. "A night meant for family, for love, for gratitude. But something happened earlier this evening that I cannot let pass without addressing." Patricia shifted nervously. "Mother," she interrupted, "you should really rest. We can talk about whatever this is tomorrow." Grandma Theodosia raised one hand, palm out like a queen, silencing her court. "I did not ask for your opinion, Patricia. I am speaking now." The room went absolutely silent. I had never seen my grandmother command a room like this. She had always been gentle, warm, soft-spoken. But tonight there was iron in her spine. She told the whole story. How she had looked out her bedroom window and seen my car pull up. How she had watched Marcus and me walk up to the porch full of excitement. How she had seen the door open just a crack, then close, and watched us walk back to the car and drive away. I came downstairs to ask what happened. She continued, and Patricia told me that my grandson had called to say they could not come, that Marcus was sick. She turned to face my mother directly. "But that was a lie, was it not, Patricia?" My mother's face crumpled. She started stammering excuses. The house was crowded. She did not want things to be awkward. She thought it would be better for everyone. Better for everyone. Grandma Theodosia repeated her voice, dropping to something cold and sharp. You turned away your own son and grandson on Christmas night, lied to me about it, and you thought that was better for everyone. Derek decided to jump in. Grandma, come on, he said in that patronizing tone he always used when he thought he was the smartest person in the room. Is this really necessary? It is Christmas. Let us not make a big deal out of a misunderstanding. Grandma Theodosia turned her gaze on him, and I watched my brother actually shrink back. A misunderstanding, she repeated. Is that what you call it when your mother deliberately excludes your brother from a family gathering? When she lies to cover it up. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it again. Even Stephanie, who usually had something to say about everything, stayed silent. My father finally spoke up. Patricia, he said quietly. Is this true? You actually sent them away? My mother's composure finally broke. She spun toward him, tears streaming down her face. You do not understand, she cried. He always ruins things. He is not like Derek. He embarrasses me with his blue-collar job and his dead wife from nowhere. I just wanted one nice Christmas without having to explain to everyone why my older son turned out so. She caught herself, but too late. The words she did not say hung in the air anyway. I felt Marcus's hand find mine. He was watching everything with wide eyes, not understanding all of it, but sensing the weight of the moment. I squeezed his hand gently, letting him know I was there. Grandma Theodosia nodded slowly, as if my mother's words had confirmed something she already knew. She walked over to an antique cabinet near the fireplace, opened a drawer, and pulled out a large manila envelope. She held it up for everyone to see. I had planned to wait until after dinner to share this, she said. But I think now is the appropriate time. She explained that the envelope contained her updated last will and testament, notarized and legally binding as of the previous week. She had spent months working with her attorney to ensure everything was in order. Then she dropped the bomb. This house, she said, looking around at the home she had lived in for 53 years, along with my savings and investments, will go to my grandson and my great-grandson Marcus when I pass. She looked directly at my mother. Patricia, you will receive nothing. Derek, you will receive nothing. You have both had every advantage in life, every opportunity. You have careers, homes, financial security. More importantly, you have shown me exactly who you are over these past years, and tonight you showed me again. Derek shot to his feet. You cannot do this, he shouted. This is insane. I am your grandson too. I have rights. Grandma Theodosia did not flinch. Rights, she said calmly. Tell me, Derek, when was the last time you visited me when it was not a holiday, or when you did not need something? When I was in the hospital last spring with pneumonia, who sat by my bed for 2 weeks until I recovered? She pointed at me. He did. He drove 4 hours each way every single day to make sure I was not alone. He brought Marcus to read me stories. He held my hand when I was scared. She turned back to Derek. You sent flowers, once, and a card that your secretary obviously signed for you. Derek's face went red. Stephanie grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back down, but he shook her off. This is unbelievable, he spat. You are punishing us because we have successful lives, because we do not have time to drop everything and come running. Grandma Theodosia shook her head sadly. I am not punishing you, Derek. I am simply giving what I have to the person who has shown me love without expecting anything in return. The person who has been there through the hard times, not just the celebrations. The person who your mother has tried to diminish and exclude for his entire life. She looked at my mother one last time. You are my daughter, Patricia. I love you. But I have watched you treat your firstborn son like he was less than nothing for 32 years. I stayed quiet because I hoped you would change, hoped you would see what I see in him. But tonight you proved that you never will. I hope this decision helps you understand what truly matters before it is too late. The room fell silent. My mother collapsed onto a chair, sobbing. My father sat frozen, staring at the floor. Derek stood there with his mouth open, unable to process what had just happened. Stephanie was already on her phone, probably texting someone about the family drama. And me, I sat there holding my son's hand, feeling something I had not felt in a very long time. Seen, valued, loved. The aftermath of that night was messy, as these things always are. Patricia and Derek left within the hour, taking their families with them. There were no goodbyes, no Merry Christmases, just the sound of car doors slamming and engines starting in the cold night air. My father stayed behind. He sat in that same armchair for a long time, not saying anything. Finally, he stood up and walked over to where I was sitting with Marcus, who had fallen asleep against my shoulder, still clutching his handmade gift. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice rough. "I have owed you one for a long time." I looked up at him, this man who had been present, but absent for most of my life, who had let my mother's cruelty go unchallenged for decades. "I know sorry does not fix anything," he continued. "I should have stood up for you. I should have told your mother she was wrong. I was a coward. I chose the easy path, and you paid the price." I did not know what to say. Part of me wanted to rage at him, to unleash 32 years of hurt and disappointment. But with Marcus warm against my chest and Grandma Theodosia watching from across the room, I found I did not have the energy for anger anymore. "I appreciate you saying that," I finally said. "I do not know where we go from here. But thank you for acknowledging it." He nodded, his eyes glistening. Then he quietly got his coat and left. After he was gone, Grandma Theodosia came to sit beside me. She gently stroked Marcus's hair, a soft smile on her face. "That boy loves you so much," she said. "You are a wonderful father." "I learned from you," I told her. "You showed me what unconditional love looks like." She chuckled softly. "I just loved you, sweetheart. That is all. It should not be remarkable, but in this family I suppose it is." We sat together in the quiet house, the Christmas tree lights twinkling, the fire crackling low. After a while, I carried Marcus upstairs to one of the guest bedrooms and tucked him in. His handmade gift was still in his hands, so I gently pried it free and set it on the nightstand. I would make sure Grandma got it in the morning. When I came back downstairs, Grandma Theodosia had made hot chocolate. We sat together by the dying fire, and she told me stories about her life that I had never heard before. About struggling as a single mother after my grandfather died. About the sacrifices she made. About her fears that she had given Patricia too much. Spoiled her, failed to teach her gratitude and empathy. "My biggest regret," she said, "is that I protected your mother from consequences her whole life. Every time she did something wrong, I fixed it. I made excuses. I enabled her. And this is the result." She took my hand in both of hers, her grip still strong despite her age. "Do not make my mistake with Marcus," she said. "Teach him that love is not about what someone can give you. Teach him to see people for who they truly are, not what they have or what they can do for you. And teach him that standing up for what is right is never wrong, even when it is hard." I promised her I would. The months that followed brought changes I never expected. Marcus and I started visiting Grandma Theodosia every other weekend. Those visits became the highlight of both our lives. She taught Marcus how to play chess, how to bake her famous apple pie, how to tend to the garden she had kept for 50 years. She told him stories about our family history, the good parts and the complicated parts, helping him understand where he came from. My father began calling me occasionally. Awkward calls at first, filled with long silences and clumsy attempts at conversation, but over time they got easier. He was trying in his own imperfect way to build something he had never bothered to build before. I could not forget the past, but I found I could make room for a different future. My mother and Derek kept their distance. I heard through the grapevine that they contested the will, but Grandma Theodosia had been thorough. Her attorney assured her it was ironclad. Eventually, they gave up and retreated into their own lives. I did not reach out to them, but I did not close the door entirely either. If they ever wanted to truly reconcile, I would listen. But I would not chase people who saw me as an inconvenience. The greatest gift that Christmas gave me was not the promise of inheritance. It was clarity. For so long I had believed the story my mother told about me, that I was the lesser son, the disappointment, the one who did not measure up. But that night, standing in my grandmother's living room, watching her speak the truth that no one else had the courage to speak, I finally understood something important. My worth was never determined by my mother's approval. My value was not measured by my job title or my bank account or how I compared to my brother. I was enough exactly as I was, and the people who could not see that were the ones with the problem, not me. Grandma Theodosia passed away peacefully in her sleep 3 years later. Marcus and I were with her at the end, holding her hands as she took her last breaths. She smiled at us before she closed her eyes, a smile full of love and peace, and the satisfaction of a life well lived. We still live in her house now, Marcus and I. We kept the Christmas decorations she loved, the antique ornaments, the tradition of apple pie. Every year on Christmas Eve, we light a candle in her memory and tell stories about her. And every year I remember that cold night when we were turned away from a door that should have welcomed us. I remember driving away with my son's tears in the rearview mirror. But most of all, I remember the phone call that brought us back and the woman who loved us enough to fight for us when no one else would. Being rejected that night felt like the end of something, but it was really the beginning. Sometimes the door that closes in your face is not a dead end. Sometimes it is life redirecting you to where you actually belong. If you have ever felt like the outsider in your own family, like no matter what you did, it was never enough, I want you to know you are not alone. And I want you to know that your worth does not depend on people who cannot see it. Now, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever had a family member stand up for you when no one else would? Or have you ever had to find your own worth despite your family telling you otherwise? Share your story in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more stories like this one. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. Whatever your family situation looks like, I hope you find your people, the ones who see you, who value you, who love you exactly as you are. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and may you always have a place where you belong.